Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order the Tuesday, September 28th meeting of the St. Bernard Community Improvement Corporation. If we could have a roll call with the secretary, please.
President Stuchel,
Present.
Vice President Rolston,
Present.
Treasurer Culbertson,
Present.
Joe Brickler,
Present.
Peggy Brickwag,
Present.
Ray Culbertson,
Present.
Chris Sauer,
Present.
Chris Schildmeyer,
Present.
Jerry Wiedemann, Amy Osmalley.
Present.
Okay. You've all been presented with the the minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes and dispense with the reading of the minutes?
Make a motion.
Real quick, I noticed that my name was not on the roll call on the minutes.
There's a correction. Oh, you came late. I forgot.
Oh, okay. I will update that before they get uploaded to the website. Sorry, Amy.
No problem.
So is there,
Motion.
yes, we probably need to make a motion to correct the minutes as read.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we correct the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay. Treasurer's report.
As of today, the balance in the Fifth Third bank account was $403,682. The balance in the First State Bank account is $25,558. Trying to think if we did not have any out of the ordinary expenses except just gas, water, electric, and I think one lawn care bill. That concludes my report.
Okay. As far as our action items for this evening, reference the sale of property. The sale of 4913 Andrew was completed last week. As far as, do you have an update on that, Meredith? As far as from the closing?
No updates. We netted $38,038.87 from the sale. Everything else proceeded smoothly.
Any questions from anyone on the board relative to that sale?
Yes, we never did have to pay the money to hook the gas up, did we?
No, we did not. That was the agreement. They agreed on the original sale price, and they're assuming all of that expense if it's necessary. Okay. As far as the next item, I was contacted by the contractors for the St. Bernard Elmwood Place School. They are in need of the ability to store materials, and it's not for an extensive period of time, but of course, during some of the weather sensitive months, their need for the plumbing contractor, electrical contractors to be able to house some of that. They're asking to work up an opportunity for the lease of the Save-A-Lot building. They're fully aware that we are not going to make any improvements if that were to come to fruition. They understand that in part of the building, the roof is compromised. They're fully able to feel comfortable with storing the items in there. At this point, what I'd like to be able to do would be to try to discuss this so that we can give some sort of an answer based upon some type of lease agreement or license agreement per se. They understand that they would have to assume, the coverage for all of the items that are being stored. Any damages would have to be covered. Basically, our goal would be to recoup any expenses relative to utilities, that sort of thing. My goal in proposing, if this is something that the board would be willing, would be to try to make this so that it is reasonable in cost, of course. Again, we're not making any improvements. We're not making an income on that portion, and they only need this short term before anything formal can be finalized with the redevelopment of the square. So at this point, I'd like to entertain some conversation relative to that and try to be able to get back to the contractors so that they can determine whether they can move forward with what they need to.
Jonathan, my biggest concern would be that I would think that we would need to have very strong language about a hard end date because we don't want it to jeopardize this development if they are running behind on their project.
So because I'm pretty much in constant communication, I have discussed this already. So they are okay with this. They would like to, if we do come into an agreement, they would like to review the agreement. And they are perfectly aware of the time frame, and so is this contractor for the school, about the fact that they know what their potential demo dates might be if this does move forward. So they are fully aware, and that can be agreed upon. So, that is a valid point and has been discussed.
Is there heat in that building? Functional?
No.
There is not functional heat, and it's not
But
necessary.
they're going to rent it whereas as is.
We're not making, if we were doing this, there'd be no improvements made to any HVAC or anything. So they don't require it. It doesn't have to be a temperature controlled environment for any reason. They just need a secure space.
Mr. President, on that, if we lease it out to them, and Mayor, this might be a question for you, is there a minimum that we have to maintain just from safety, or, I'm assuming they would have to have their own insurance on that property. I'm just trying to think of, how bad of, shape that's in. Do we get into any potential legal issues if the ceiling falls down or?
I think, I think whatever document we end up drafting would have to have fairly strong indemnification language that they understand that we're only providing the space, and that any damage to life, limb, or property because of their use of the space would be their sole and complete responsibility. If they wanted to do some type of short term, I guess, I don't even know what it would be in this capacity, renter's insurance for their products, they could, but no, that language would need to be included in the document.
How are we going to decide on the lease or the cost and stuff?
Well, my goal would be to actually be able to have, a potential range, if not a dollar amount. Again, the fact that this, there's limited expense based upon utilities, just enough to turn the lights on, coming and going. And the fact that we're not making any improvements, and we're not making actually any revenue from those two vacant portions of the building right now, whether or not, we would speak of a minimal amount, $500 a month.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the primary motive for doing this is that it helps expedite the construction of the school, not necessarily that it's any sort of, money making opportunity for the CIC would be how I would look at it.
Correct. I agree.
But the contractor's making money on the building a school.
So that you make a valid point, Tom, but we're not trying to add to the expense of the school construction. We're trying to be a good steward in the community to assist them in making up for some of the lost time that they've had with relative to weather and COVID. So they do not have the ability right now to store the materials in a secure place within their new structure. So this would be an assistance to them. It doesn't mean that we need to profit. Again, the spirit of this organization is not necessarily to profit on everything.
Mr. President, sorry. I would say the minimum you can come up with to turn on the lights. I mean, this is the school being built. This is ridiculous that we think we're going to make a profit off of it. So I think if you could come up with the minimum that it would cost us, that's where I would go.
Mr. President, I agree with Peggy. 500 actually sounds like too
Yeah.
much
Right,
to
I
me.
mean, it's just
Oh,
sitting
my-
there empty anyway.
Yeah.
I also agree.
Take the light bill.
The thing is that schools they play an important role to the value of the properties in the community. With the school being unfinished, with the school being finished, it will actually enhance what we're wanting to do with this development. So it benefits us to see this project expedited.
So as far as if you were going to ask, well, what are we paying right now in utility cost? We're not paying much of anything except for any connection fees. The lights are not on actually in the unit itself unless manually turned on for any random reason. So if indeed we were, it's going to be up or under a couple $100 a month.
If that.
And Mr. President, so you're talking just storage. They're not going to set up offices or anything
Just
like that.
strictly storage.
Okay. Then I would say let's do a flat fee because I don't want to get into any issues where I'm getting invoices and having to turn around and bill them for utility usage.
I agree with that.
So I'm fine with
warehouse
your
rate.
$500 if they're fine with it.
Mr. President, I like to suggest $200. If you think that's about the minimum, 200, 250, that would be my suggestion.
I would agree with that, and I would write language in that if we find that the utility costs end up exceeding that they will make up the difference.
That's
I agree
fair.
with that.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I got another question. What about the taxes that we're paying on that?
The taxes are the same regardless if it's occupied or not. I don't see why they need to pay part of the taxes.
Right.
We're paying it vacant or not. I don't think we should be trying to pass on our other additional expenses that are fixed to begin with, whether occupied or unoccupied.
Right. They're helping the community. We got to pay for all of that anyway.
I mean, this is obviously, up for a vote, and I understand we're actually in the deliberation portion of this, but again, the whole idea of this was to try to be a good steward, not to prorate their lease fee based upon what our fixed expenses are with property taxes and all. That would almost be unrealistic because that is the highest taxable parcel that we own.
It's commercial property.
So I'd like to actually, at this point, ask for a motion from the board to accept the lease or rental fee for the license agreement that we'll develop for $250 a month, with the understanding that if the utilities exceed that they will pay the difference.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
On the motion to lease or license a portion of the shopping center to the contractor for the school for $250 a month with possible overage for utilities. President Stuchel,
Yes.
Vice President Rolfson,
No.
Treasurer Culbertson.
Yes.
I vote yes. Joe Brickler,
Yes.
Peggy Brickweg,
Yes.
Ray Culbertson,
Yes.
Chris Sauer,
Yes.
Chris Schildmeyer,
Yes.
Jerry Wiedemann,
Yes.
Amy Osmalley.
Yes.
Motion passes. The motion passes.
Okay, next item under action items. This evening, I received a proposal from St. Clement School for the potential purchase or interest in a property that we own next to the school. And as far as for tonight, yes, I have an application here. The application does need to be reviewed. It does need to be distributed to the board members. As far as the use of the property itself and what is being requested is for, of course, parking, playground area that would be fenced, and also a drive-through and pickup option, of course, for the students in the morning and the afternoon. What I would like to do actually is to be able to give adequate review to this application and consideration. Would actually like to table this until the next meeting so that we can actually thoroughly and adequately review this application to determine if this is a possibility, since at this point right now, currently, we did not have the parcel on the market. So I would like to discuss this in our next meeting so that we can properly review that, and then actually invite of course, the interested parties, of course, the principal, Nicole Brainerd, to come back at that meeting if there are any questions, if that would be okay. If anyone has any objection, but again, that way at least we can review the application and discuss that in committee.
Mr. President, on this application, this property is not listed. How long ago did we take that off the market? Has that been 3 years?
It's been at least 2.
All right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I knew we didn't have any action on that property prior to taking it off the market. So I just, I'm fine with tabling it for right now.
So at the next meeting on October 26th, we will review, have a discussion, and actually, if it's okay, would like to have you back. So that way, if there are any questions, we can at least discuss that. In the meantime, we will review the application, and if there's any further questions, we'll reach out. Any other questions before we move on? As far as the next request that I had received actually since we last met, we have an interested party that would like to build, 2 single family homes on the lots that we actually took back into our control on Tower Avenue next to the townhomes. I didn't know if the board had any opinion at this point about whether or not making those actual parcels available for purchase for, of course, a single family home, whether there's any interest in that.
Mr. President, on these, I think, since these aren't on it goes back to, I guess, a conversation we had a couple of years ago about, not having properties listed. So not knowing, all the available opportunities that are out there. We're kind of getting solicited by just, people that are aware that we own the properties. So my concern is, we're kind of limiting ourselves to just the people that know about the properties instead of putting it out there to have other people that might be interested come forth and put together their proposal.
And sorry.
So it sounds like, so we just for context, these are the lots that we just received control back. So up until I think about a month ago, we were technically under contract. But it sounds, Bob, like you would be in favor of publicly listing them for sale.
Correct.
So that everybody has a chance to submit applications.
By no means was I insinuating that we should sell them to the one person that came forward. But
that's what
the whole idea was that, again, the once the parcels came back into our control and we were no longer obligated to continue with the construction of the townhomes, that whether or not the CIC would be willing to release those to available bid and application process from any interested party to basically put this under our normal process.
Now, with that, would you put together just a criteria of what we would like to see there, kind of like we've done with the other properties?
Yes, I think we need to put
Yeah.
this in the property review committee, come up with a proposal to bring forward to the board as to what would be agreed upon for, minimum standards, type of construction, anything else. And then we can, take it to the next level.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if we're going to go that way, I would like to suggest this time that the criteria stay with the criteria. If you remember, it was kind of going all over the place with the price and the side entry, the front entry and all that. We had a large discussion. So that was not me.
I think Tom's breathing into it.
Thank you, Tom. I would like to suggest that we come up with the selling price of the lot, and and then they can come up with the house, but I would not include the lot and the house in the same thing, because that's where the one on Park Place got very confusing.
I would actually, if we're going to do that, I think we do want to have some type of minimum standard if we want to try to stick with a particular type of architecture to match. But as far as, I understand what you're speaking of, Peggy, but again, if we can, we'll put this in committee, come up with what the specs to put out and go from there. So we don't have to accomplish that tonight. But again, we can take all of that under advisement, what happened last time. So at this point, unless anyone else has anything else under open discussion or additional agenda items on the board, does anyone have anything? I have one item. I have asked Chris Sauer actually to assist in heading up the We Thrive, or the Go Vibrant walking trails option. So Chris actually, and maybe has a little bit, he could say that they came up with some options that we could be able to work with as far as a QR code that we can work through this as far as for the mapping. And we'll be reaching out for both the internal option within the village limits as far as the residential side and reaching out to our industrial partners as well. But we will be trying to put together that committee to be able to move forward during the fall months and hopefully be able to have this up and ready for early part of next year. Do you have anything to add to?
Not a whole bunch, just that there's some I think neat things we can do, one of the things addressed was, how do we know if people are going to be actually using this thing and doing all that? And they offer some ways to log your miles and things like that. But I think we can do some interesting things with the sign since we do have some flexibility with that, where we've got basically, in essence, when somebody is at a physical sign and they can use a QR code on their phone, we can control what happens next, what comes up, and, we can, keep track of who they are and how many miles they've walked and this, that, and the other, and do sorts of things like that, as well as, other promotions. So I think we've got an interesting opportunity to, kick this off and do, start of a, what might perhaps ultimately over time grow to be a larger kind of walking trail network around here.
Yeah, and working with our community partners for incentives, and
Yep.
you might be able to find gift certificates and gift cards and other options that come around for the use of it. So hopefully we'll see a whole lot more people on our sidewalks. As far as anything else under open discussion or additional agenda items, Tom? Okay. Anyone in the audience have anything under open discussion items that they'd like to bring forward? Yes.
Property on Andrew that's closed and sold and sealed. Any idea what they plan to do with that property?
As of right now, their plan is to completely renovate the property and either one of two things, either occupy it or sell it as a, again, owner occupied single family home.
Any idea when they will clean it up?
I will certainly ask them when their plan is to start.
The sale closed September 17th, so it is still fairly fresh.
One thing, there are people down there working. I've seen them in the last couple of days inside the building, so they're doing something right now.
And we will discuss with them as far as the fence line. I'll ask them about that and see what we can do to help expedite that, even if it's a matter of, I'm even willing, and I'm pretty sure I can get a couple other people that could help, if it would be a matter of actually volunteering to even help work on some of that fence line, just to help start to expedite that.
What about the busted garage? That's been running there for 10, 15 years.
So their plan, if I remember properly, was to rebuild that.
Is that, do they have to get a permit? Do they have to get so far away from the property lines to do that?
So anything,
The garage has been down for,
any improvements that they make have to be, to our code, and all has to be permitted.
when I put the addition on my house, the committee that had to approve that actually invited all my neighbors in to say yay or nay whether they wanted me to put that addition on. Is that still a practice?
So there's the reason for what happened in your, oh, I'm sorry. So my fault. The question actually from the audience had to do with whether or not the proposed property owner now would have to get a permit or go through what is being described as a variance application and go through the variance process. So it depends ultimately the fact that the foundation, which whether or not that would still count as the whole structure being totally demolished, is whether or not they could actually build on the current foundation that's there, because that is actually above ground, or whether or not they would actually have to, start from scratch. The reason you had to get a variance is because as far as the setbacks. So whether or not they will have to be in compliance either way. So our code enforcement office, our CBO would have to approve anything that it's done to that. So anything they're doing has to follow our code and will be strictly enforced. At this point, does anyone else in the audience have anything under open agenda items? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Our next public meeting will be on Tuesday, October 26th in council chambers at 6 p.m. Thank you, and we'll take just a brief break before we start our community engagement portion. Thank you.
Okay. You know the bathroom? It's right down here. Okay. Mary, down the next one, isn't it?
Yes.
Mary, down the next one. Go down to the next section. Takes 10 minutes to walk up the steps.